Her mother's voice shook as she adjusted the ivory veil, but not from emotion, only fear. "Just close your eyes," she whispered, fingers tightening painfully at the nape of her daughter's neck, "and endure the pain. That's all you have to do." Those words followed Elara Whitmore like a curse as she stood alone in the candlelit bridal chamber of the most feared being in the supernatural world, the Vampire King of the Night Dominion. She had been told to expect agony. Blood. Screams swallowed by stone walls. She had been told that by morning she would either be dead or no longer herself. No one had told her the truth. No one had warned her that the monster waiting behind those doors would be the only one who refused to lie to her. The storm outside the castle battered against the stained glass windows, thunder rolling like a funeral drum. Elara's reflection stared back at her from a tall mirror, pale, trembling, wrapped in a white gown that felt less like a wedding dress and more like a burial shroud. The lace sleeves hid the bruises on her arms, souvenirs from a lifetime of being told to be quiet, obedient, grateful. Her brown hair was pinned neatly back, exposing her neck. Her mother had insisted on that. "They bite faster if you don't resist," her mother had said earlier, voice calm, rehearsed. "Don't scream. It only makes them angry." Elara swallowed hard. She had grown up poor despite her family name, surviving on half-truths and unpaid bills, watching her mother smile in public and harden in private. When the debt collectors came, Elara learned to disappear. When her father died suddenly, she learned not to ask questions. And when the invitation from the Night Dominion arrived, sealed in black wax, she learned what it meant to be expendable. The Vampire King had cleared their debts overnight. Every notice vanished. Every threat stopped. In return he requested a bride. A bride, her mother said lightly, like it was a promotion instead of a sentence. The heavy doors groaned open. The sound echoed through Elara's bones. She stepped forward because she had nowhere else to go. The throne chamber was vast, carved from dark stone and lit by hundreds of floating candles. At the far end stood the Vampire King himself. He was taller than she expected, dressed in black ceremonial armor etched with ancient symbols. His presence pressed into the room like gravity itself, cold, commanding, absolute. His eyes were a piercing silver blue, sharp enough to cut through lies. He did not smile. He did not bare his fangs. He simply watched her walk toward him. Every step felt like a farewell. The ceremony was brief and merciless. Ancient words spoken in a language Elara didn't understand, vows that sounded more like contracts than promises. No guests on her side. No warmth. When the final seal was spoken, the room fell silent. They were alone. Elara's heart thundered as servants slipped away, doors closing with finality. The Vampire King approached her slowly, each step deliberate. She lowered her gaze, her mother's voice screaming in her mind, "Endure the pain, endure the pain." She turned her head to the side, exposing her neck. "Is that what they told you?" His voice finally came, deep, calm, controlled. Elara flinched. "Told me, what, my king? That you are here to be hurt." Her breath caught. "My mother said, this was the price. That I should endure it." Silence fell like a blade. The Vampire King stopped moving. Slowly, dangerously slowly, he reached out, not to bite but to lift her chin. His touch was cool but not cruel. He forced her to meet his eyes. "Look at me," he said quietly. "Did anyone ask if you agreed to this?" Tears burned her eyes. "I didn't think it mattered." Something shifted in his expression. Not hunger. Not desire. Anger. Cold, ancient, restrained fury. "There is no debt," he said. Elara blinked. "What?" "I did not buy you to settle a debt," he repeated, voice tightening. "Your family owed me nothing." The room tilted. That's impossible." My mother said. She lied. The word hit harder than any slap. He turned away sharply, pacing once like a caged predator. "Your father's estate was solvent. The funds were transferred months ago." Elara's knees weakened. "Then why am I here?" The Vampire King faced her again, eyes burning now, not with hunger but with something far more dangerous. "Because someone decided your life was currency." Her breath shattered into a sob. Years of shame, of guilt, of believing she was a burden crashed over her all at once. "She sold me," Elara whispered. "My own mother sold me." Yes. The truth was merciless. But it was honest. She sank onto the edge of the massive bed, hands shaking. "Then why did you accept?" "For the same reason I am standing between you and every monster in this world," he answered. "Because if I hadn't, someone far worse would have." He knelt in front of her, the Vampire King, ruler of the night, lowering himself to her eye level. No one will touch you without your consent. No one will drink your blood. Not tonight. Not ever. Elara stared at him, disbelief cracking her fear. Why? Because I refuse to become what they expect of me, he said. And because you deserve better than endurance. For the first time that night she cried, not from terror, but from the unbearable relief of being seen. Sleep, he said gently, rising. You are safe here. He turned toward the door, then paused. Tomorrow, he added, voice colder, sharper, we will discuss what justice looks like. The doors closed softly behind him. Elara lay back against the silk pillows, heart racing, tears drying on her cheeks. The monster she had been warned about had spared her, protected her. And the people who were supposed to love her had been the real danger all along. Outside, thunder roared again. But for the first time in her life, Elara Whitmore did not feel alone. Elara woke to silence so complete it felt unreal. No chains. No pain. No screams trapped in stone walls like her mother had promised. Soft gray light filtered through towering windows, brushing against silk curtains and polished obsidian floors. The bed beneath her was vast, impossibly soft and untouched on the other side. For a terrifying second, she wondered if the night before had been a dream born from fear and exhaustion. Then she noticed the guards. 2 figures stood outside the open chamber doors, not looming, not watching her like prey, but facing outward, weapons lowered as if guarding something precious. Not a prisoner. Elara sat up slowly, clutching the sheets to her chest. Every instinct she had learned growing up told her this calm was temporary. That kindness always came with a price. That safety was borrowed. A soft knock echoed. Before she could answer, the door opened. The Vampire King entered, not in armor this time but in a dark, tailored coat, his presence still powerful, still commanding but less terrifying in the morning light. His silver-blue eyes flicked to her face, then deliberately away, giving her space. You're awake, he said. I didn't know if I was allowed to leave the bed, Elara admitted quietly. His brow tightened. You are allowed to do anything you wish within these walls. She studied him carefully. Even leave. Pause. Yes, he said finally. Though the world outside is not forgiving. She nodded as if she already knew that. A servant entered behind him, placing a tray of food on a nearby table. Warm bread, fruit, tea steaming gently. Elara stared at it like it might disappear if she blinked. For me, she asked. For you, the king confirmed. No one had ever brought her food without expecting something in return. She ate slowly, hands shaking at first, then steadier as her body realized it was safe, at least for now. The Vampire King remained near the window, watching the clouds shift, as if giving her the illusion of privacy. What happens now? She asked eventually. He turned. Now you learn the truth. Her stomach tightened. About my family? About you. The words settled heavy between them. He gestured for her to follow, leading her through winding corridors carved with ancient symbols. The castle felt alive, whispering walls, air thick with history. They stopped in a circular chamber lined with mirrors etched in silver runes. This is the Hall of Binding, he said, where contracts are revealed as they truly are. Elara hugged her arms around herself. I didn't agree to anything. No, he said, voice low. You didn't? And that is the problem. He pressed his palm to one of the mirrors. Light rippled across the glass and suddenly Elara saw her mother, signing a document with shaking hands, eyes cold, lips pressed into a practiced smile. The parchment glowed red as her name was written. Elara's breath broke. She never hesitated. The contract named you as an offering, the king said carefully, but it lacked the only thing that gives it power. Her voice barely worked. My consent. Yes. The mirror shifted again, showing a shadowed figure watching from afar. Someone not human, eyes burning with hunger. If I had refused the contract, the Vampire King continued, another would have claimed it. A lesser lord. One who would not ask questions. One who would not spare you. Elara's knees weakened. So you married me to save me. I married you to protect you, he corrected. There is a difference. Silence followed. Thick, fragile. Then what am I to you? She asked softly. He looked at her then, really looked at her, not like a king, not like a predator, but like a man carrying centuries of weight. You are under my protection, he said. And until you choose otherwise, that is all you must be. She swallowed. And if I choose to stay? His jaw tightened. Then we will redefine this bond on your terms. No one had ever given her that power. They returned to the upper halls, where Elara was shown her chambers, Bright, warm, filled with books and a balcony overlooking dark forests stretching endlessly. Freedom wrapped in stone walls. Safety with teeth. That night, as she stood on the balcony, the Vampire King joined her, keeping a careful distance. "You don't fear me," he said quietly. "I do," Elara admitted. "But not in the way they taught me." He inclined his head. "Fear can be unlearned." Below them the forest stirred. "My mother will come," Elara said suddenly. "She'll want something." "She will not cross my borders," he replied. "But she'll try," Elara whispered. "Yes," he said. "And when she does, she will learn the cost of using blood as currency." Elara turned to him. "You sound angry." "I am," he said simply. "On your behalf." The words sent a shiver through her, not fear but something dangerous. Something warm. For the first time Elara wondered what it would be like to choose him. Not as a savior. Not as a king. But as something else entirely. And far below, unseen eyes watched the castle lights burn through the night, waiting for the moment protection faltered. The first scream came from the forest. It was distant, barely more than a ripple through the cold air, but the Vampire King felt it instantly. He froze mid-step in the corridor outside Elara's chambers, every instinct flaring like a blade drawn from its sheath. The castle responded to him, walls humming low, wards tightening as if breathing in. Elara felt it too. She had been seated near the fire, turning a page of a book she couldn't focus on, when the warmth vanished from the room. The flames dimmed. The shadows deepened. Something was wrong. The door opened without a knock. The Vampire King stood there, expression carved from stone, eyes glowing faintly silver. "Stay inside," he ordered. Her heart jumped. "What's happening?" "A warning," he said. Nothing more. But the lie was thin. She rose anyway, crossing the room to him. "You said I could choose." His gaze flicked to her face, then away, jaw tightening. "And I am choosing to keep you alive." Another sound echoed, closer this time. Not a scream now but laughter. Oh, mocking. The king cursed under his breath in a language older than the walls around them. "They've found me," Elara whispered. "Yes," he said. "And they've found you." The doors at the end of the hall slammed open. Wind tore through the corridor, snuffing candles as shadows bled into the stone. A figure stepped forward, tall and lean, eyes glowing crimson, smile sharp with amusement. "Brother," the stranger drawled. "You always did hide your treasures so well." Elara felt the Vampire King move instantly, placing himself in front of her without hesitation, one arm extending protectively behind him. "You are not welcome here, Valric," he said, voice deadly calm. Valric laughed softly. "You married a human," he said, eyes sliding past the king to Elara. "Did you truly think the knight wouldn't notice?" Elara's pulse thundered. "Who is he?" "A mistake," the king answered. Valric stepped closer, ignoring the wards that hissed at his presence. "The council is curious," he said. "A human bride bound to the crown. Unclaimed. Untouched." The word made Elara flinch. The Vampire King's voice dropped into something feral. "Say another word and I will end you." Valric's grin widened. "Careful. The council already suspects you're growing attached." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Elara felt it then, power surging through the room, ancient and restrained by will alone. The king was holding himself back. Not for the castle. Not for the night. For her. "You should leave," he said to Valric. "Before I forget my mercy." Valric's gaze lingered on Elara, assessing, calculating. "Enjoy your illusion of safety, little bride," he murmured. "The night always collects its due." He vanished into shadow as suddenly as he'd appeared. Silence crashed down. Elara's legs gave out. The king caught her before she hit the floor, hands firm but careful, as if she were made of something fragile and irreplaceable. She clutched his coat, breath shaking. "They want me," she whispered. "They will not have you," he said immediately. She looked up at him, eyes wide. "You can't promise that." "I can," he said. "And I do." For a long moment, neither of them moved. She could feel the steady power beneath his calm, the tension coiled tight, the restraint that cost him more than she understood. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why protect me when it risks everything?" His hands loosened, but he didn't step away. "Because I know what it is to be used," he said. "And I will not allow it again." The honesty in his voice cracked something open inside her. That night, Elara couldn't sleep. She wandered the castle halls until she found him standing on the battlements, watching the forest with lethal focus. "They're coming back," she said. "Yes. Soon." Yes. She joined him at the stone railing, the wind tugging at her hair. If I leave, she said slowly, they stop targeting you. His head snapped toward her. That is not an option. It is if I choose it. The word hit him harder than any blade. He turned fully to her. You do not owe this world your suffering. But I won't let them use you because of me. Something dark and intense flashed in his eyes. You already matter, he said, voice low. Leaving will not change that. Her breath caught. Then what do we do? He reached out, hesitated, then gently brushed his knuckles against her hand. The contact was brief, electric, controlled with brutal effort. We prepare, he said. And I stop pretending this bond is only a contract. The admission hung between them, dangerous, undeniable. Below them, the forest stirred again. The night had answered back. And this time it was not asking permission. The council arrived at dawn. They did not knock. The sky above the night dominion darkened unnaturally, clouds spiraling inward as if pulled by an unseen force. Bells rang through the castle, low, ancient tones that vibrated through Alara's chest as she stood at the window of her chambers, watching the world tense beneath the weight of something old and cruel. She felt it before anyone told her. Judgment. The Vampire King was already there when she turned, standing rigid near the door, armor reforged in black and silver, his presence filling the room like a storm barely contained. They're here for me, Alara said. They are here because they fear me, he replied. And because you are the one thing they cannot predict. The words sent a chill through her, not fear this time but clarity. Servants hurried through the halls as the great council chamber opened, its ancient seals breaking with a thunderous echo. Alara walked beside the king, no longer trailing behind. Every step felt heavier, as if the castle itself was watching her choose who she would become. The council waited in a ring of shadowed thrones, ancient vampires, cloaked in darkness and power, eyes glowing with interest and disdain. Valric stood among them, his smile sharp with satisfaction. A human bride, one of the elders hissed. Unclaimed. Unbroken. Alara stiffened, but the Vampire King stepped forward instantly, his voice cutting through the chamber like steel. She stands under my crown. Another elder leaned forward. Your crown does not erase tradition. No, the king said coldly. But it overrides it. Murmurs rippled through the room. Valric laughed softly. You risk war for a mortal who hasn't even tasted the night. The Vampire King's jaw tightened. Careful. The elder at the center rose slowly. The bond is incomplete, she said, gaze locking onto Alara. Which means the girl may still choose. Every eye turned to her. The room pressed in, power bearing down, testing her resolve. This was what her mother had never given her. Just. Alara stepped forward. I was traded like an object, she said, voice trembling but steady. But I am not one. I did not agree to your traditions, your hunger, or your politics. Valric sneered. You're nothing without him. The words should have broken her. Instead, they ignited something deep in her chest. Alara felt it then, a warmth spreading through her veins, answering the bond she hadn't known existed. The room shifted. The mirrors along the walls flared with light. The elders stilled. The Vampire King turned sharply. Alara. I choose, she said louder now, power threading through her voice. But I choose myself. The air cracked. A shockwave rippled outward, extinguishing torches, forcing several elders back in their seats. Alara gasped, hands shaking as light shimmered around her skin. Valric's smile vanished. She carries the mark, the central elder whispered. A dormant bloodline. The Vampire King stared at Alara, awe and something like fear crossing his features. You were never powerless, he said quietly. They just made sure you never knew. Alara's breath came fast. What am I? Something rare, the elder said. A human born with the ability to command supernatural bonds. A sovereign anchor. Silence fell heavy. Valric stepped back. That's impossible. No, the Vampire King said, stepping beside Alara, his hand hovering near hers without touching. It's why the night noticed her. The council shifted uneasily. She is under my protection, he declared. And now, under her own power. The central elder studied Alara carefully. You will be watched. Alara met her gaze without flinching. Then watch. The council withdrew reluctantly, shadows dissolving into stone. Valric lingered last, eyes burning with resentment. This isn't over, he warned. Alara didn't look away. No, she said. It's just begun. When the chamber finally emptied, the strength drained from her all at once. The vampire king caught her again, holding her steady. You terrified them, he said softly. She laughed weakly. I terrified myself. His thumb brushed her wrist, respectful, grounding. You stood when they expected you to kneel. She looked up at him. You didn't stop me. Because you didn't need saving, he said. You needed space to rise. Their eyes locked, something unspoken, dangerous, and deeply wanted simmering between them. What happens now? She asked. Now, he said, voice low and certain, the night will test you. Elara straightened, strength returning. Then let it try. Far beyond the castle walls, something ancient stirred awake, drawn by a power long hidden. And the world was about to learn that the human bride was never meant to be a sacrifice. She was meant to be a force. The betrayal came from the one place Elara least expected. Trust. The castle had not slept since the council left. The night dominion hummed with tension, wards reforged, guards doubled, shadows restless. Elara felt it everywhere she walked, a pressure beneath her skin, as if the world itself was waiting for her to make a mistake. She stood alone in the Eastern Library when it happened. The room was ancient, carved with towering shelves and floating candles, dust motes drifting like stars. Elara had come here to breathe, to remind herself that she was still human, still real. A soft voice broke the silence. You shouldn't be alone. She turned, startled. It was Saran, one of the king's oldest attendants. Gentle. Quiet. Someone who had smiled at her when others only stared. I needed air, Elara said. Saran stepped closer, expression sympathetic. You've been through too much. Power awakens enemies, and opportunities. Something in his tone made her stomach tighten. Before she could step back, the room shifted. The doors slammed shut. The candles flared red. Elara gasped as invisible force wrapped around her wrists, pinning her in place. Saran, stop, she cried. His expression changed instantly, softness cracking into something sharp and desperate. I'm sorry, he said. But they promised me freedom. The shadows peeled away from him, revealing the sigil of the council burned into his palm. Valric's voice echoed through the chamber. Well done. The vampire king felt it the moment the bond strained. Pain lanced through his chest, not physical but something far worse. He moved instantly, tearing through corridors with lethal speed, power rippling unchecked. Elara, he breathed. In the library, Elara struggled as the air grew heavier, power pulsing through her veins, wild and untrained. You lied to me, she whispered to Saran. Yes, he said, shame flickering. But they'll destroy him if I don't. Valric stepped from the shadows, eyes alight with triumph. You see, he said smoothly, choice always comes with consequences. You won't touch her, Valric added, circling. Not yet. But you will break him. Elara's fear burned away, replaced by fury. You think I'm leverage, she said quietly. Valric smiled. A very effective one. The doors exploded inward. The vampire king entered like a force of nature, eyes blazing, shadows recoiling from him in fear. The pressure shattered instantly, Elara collapsing forward as he caught her against his chest. His arms wrapped around her without thought. You're safe, he said fiercely. I have you. Valric laughed. Do you? The sigil on Saran's hand flared, ancient magic activating. The castle groaned. Wards failed. You'll have to choose, Valric taunted. Kill him, or let the Dominion burn. The vampire king went still. Elara felt it, the impossible weight of the decision crushing him. She looked up at his face and saw it clearly for the first time. Fear. Not for himself. For her. No, she said suddenly, pulling away despite his grip. I choose. Elara, he began. She stepped forward, power rising like a tide she no longer resisted. The air shimmered around her, light and shadow bending to her will. I am not a weakness, she said, voice carrying through the chamber. I am not a threat. And I am not yours to bargain with. Valric's smile faltered. You don't understand what you are. I understand enough, she replied. She reached inward, past fear, past doubt, and claimed the bond. Not as a bride. Not as a possession. As an equal. The sigil on Saran's hand shattered. He screamed as the council's mark burned away, magic snapping like broken chains. Valric staggered back. Impossible. Elara lifted her hand. The shadows obeyed. Leave, she said. The word carried authority older than the throne itself. Valric vanished in a storm of darkness, the threat torn from the chamber. The castle exhaled. Silence followed. Saran collapsed, freed but broken. Guards rushed in, taking him away without a word. Elara swayed. The Vampire King caught her, holding her tightly this time, no restraint left. "You shouldn't have had to do that," he said hoarsely. She looked up at him. "You would have sacrificed everything." "Yes," he admitted instantly. The truth struck between them like lightning. "Then listen to me," Elara said, placing her hand over his heart. "I won't be protected by your destruction." His breath shook. "You are my queen in every way that matters." She froze. "I didn't mean," he began. "I know," she said softly. "But I heard it anyway." They stood there, bound by something no council could control, something chosen, not forced. Outside, the night pulled back slightly as if reconsidering its next move. Because the human bride had stopped being a prize. And the Vampire King had just admitted what the entire world would soon fear. She was no longer someone he protected. She was someone he could not lose. War was not declared with words. It began with silence. Across the night dominion, ancient borders flared to life. Runes glowing along mountains, rivers freezing mid-flow, forests bowing under invisible pressure. The supernatural world felt it instantly. Something had changed. Something irreversible. Elara stood at the highest balcony of the castle, wind tearing at her hair, the sky above darkened into a living storm. She could feel the pull of the night now, not as fear, not as hunger, but as awareness. Threads of power stretched outward from her, brushing against creatures she had never seen, places she had never been. "They're gathering," she said quietly. Behind her, the Vampire King adjusted his gauntlets, armor locking into place with a final, ominous sound. He no longer tried to hide what he was. What they were facing. "Yes," he replied. "And this time they won't hide behind councils or shadows." She turned to him. "They'll come for me openly." "They'll come for us," he corrected. Below, the castle gates opened as allied factions arrived. Nightborn clans, exiled houses, beings who had watched the throne from a distance for centuries. They knelt not just to the crown, but to her. Elara's breath caught. "They're bowing. They recognize power," the king said. "And choice." Trumpets echoed through the valley as Valric's forces appeared at the edge of the forest. An army of shadow and crimson eyes, banners torn by dark wind. He stood at the front, smiling like a man who believed the ending was already written. The Vampire King stepped forward, voice amplified by ancient magic. "This ends now," he declared. "No more bargains. No more blood traded like coin." Valric laughed, voice carrying easily. "You broke the balance for a human." The king didn't deny it. "Yes," he said simply. Gasps rippled through both armies. Elara moved to stand beside him. Every instinct screamed at her to hide, to let him shield her, but she didn't. She lifted her chin, power thrumming steadily beneath her skin. "I was never yours to claim," she said, her voice cutting through the air, calm and unshaking. "And I will never be your leverage again." Valric's eyes burned. "You think standing beside him makes you equal?" Elara felt the bond surge, not possessive, not consuming, but shared. She reached out and took the Vampire King's hand. The night answered. The ground trembled. Shadows bent inward, forming a vast, silent circle around them. "I don't stand beside him because I'm protected," she said. "I stand beside him because I choose him." The Vampire King turned to her, stunned. "You don't have to," he began. She squeezed his hand. "I know." That was when he stopped holding back. He raised his free hand, power erupting like a storm unleashed. "Hear me," he commanded the night itself. "She is not a weakness. She is not a hostage. She is not a symbol." He turned, eyes blazing, voice ringing across the battlefield. "She is my equal." The declaration shattered the old world. The clash that followed was violent but brief, because the night had already chosen. Shadows turned against Valric's forces, binding them, stripping away borrowed power. Elara felt every thread guiding, not controlling but anchoring. Valric lunged forward, rage overtaking caution. "You would rewrite everything for her?" he snarled. "Yes," the Vampire King answered without hesitation. "I already have." Elara stepped forward, lifting her hand, not to destroy but to end it. "This war was built on fear," she said. "And fear has no claim over me." The shadows collapsed inward, swallowing Valric's power and casting him down, alive, defeated, stripped of influence. Silence fell again. The battlefield knelt. The Vampire King turned to Elara slowly, reverence in his gaze. "You've changed the night." She met his eyes, steady and certain. "No. I changed myself." He removed his crown. Gasps echoed. And then, before kings, armies and ancient beings, he placed it into her hands. Not above me, he said. With me. Tears burned her eyes as she set it back upon his head, and then rested her forehead against his. The world watched as the bond between them sealed, not in blood, not in command, but in choice. The war was over. But the legend had just begun. Peace did not arrive loudly. It came in fragments, quiet mornings, softened shadows, borders that no longer burned with warning. The night dominion exhaled slowly, as if the world itself needed time to believe the war was truly over. Ilara stood in the garden where moonlight pooled like silver water, breathing in air that no longer tasted of fear. The castle felt different now. Not weaker. Lighter. Behind her, footsteps approached, unhurried, familiar. The vampire king no longer wore armor. No crown either. Just a dark coat, his presence still commanding but no longer distant. He had learned how to exist without walls. They're rebuilding the outer villages, he said quietly. No more tribute. No blood contracts. Ilara smiled faintly. The council won't like that. They won't return, he replied. Not in the way they were. Silence settled between them, comfortable and earned. What happens to Valric? She asked. He lives, the king answered. Powerless. Watching a world he can no longer control. She nodded. Justice without cruelty. Mattered. They walked together through the garden, fingers brushing occasionally, not clinging, not afraid. Choice had made them careful in the best way. Ilara, he said suddenly, stopping near the old stone fountain. There is something I must ask. Not as a king. She turned to face him. Then ask as yourself. His gaze softened. Stay. Not because of duty. Not because of protection. But because you want this life. She didn't answer immediately. Memories rose, her mother's voice, the lie of endurance, the years of being told she was small. She thought of the power she'd claimed, the world that now listened when she spoke. I will stay, she said finally. But not as a symbol. And not as something you fear losing. Relief crossed his face, quick, honest. Then stay as my equal. She smiled. I already am. The trial came days later. Not for him. For her mother. The woman stood in the great hall, eyes darting, hands trembling, still wearing the same practiced expression she'd perfected over years of survival. She didn't look at Ilara at first. You ruined everything, her mother spat finally. You could have endured. We would have been safe. Ilara stepped forward, calm as stone. You were never in danger. Her mother froze. You made me believe pain was love, Ilara continued. That survival meant silence. I forgive you. The word struck harder than anger ever could. But forgiveness, Ilara said softly, does not mean access. She turned away. The doors closed. The past stayed behind them. That night, Ilara stood once more on the highest balcony, the moon full and gentle above. The vampire king joined her, resting his arm lightly against the stone, not touching her yet, always leaving space. You changed everything, he said. She shook her head. No. I chose differently. He looked at her then, not as a ruler, not as a protector, but as someone who had found something rare and fragile and strong. Then choose me, he said quietly. Again. Every day. She reached for his hand. I already do. The night responded, not roaring, not trembling, but settling into something peaceful. Below them the world continued. Free. Unafraid. And for the first time in centuries, the vampire king did not stand alone beneath the moon. Nor did the woman once meant to be a sacrifice. Because love, when chosen freely, does not bind. It builds.